10 years ago, buying a home felt like a milestone. Today, for so many of us, it feels more like a fantasy. Home prices are at record highs, interest rates have basically doubled in a short amount of time, and rent just keeps climbing and climbing. Even people with good jobs, people who are doing everything right, are asking the same question. How is anyone actually affording this? If you've ever found yourself scrolling through Zillow only to close the app immediately and just let out a heavy sigh, you are not alone and you are not crazy. Something fundamental has changed in the housing market. In this video, we're going to break down exactly why buying a house feels impossible right now. We'll look at what's happening behind the scenes, beyond the headlines, to give you a clear picture of the forces at play. Let's start with a little trip down memory lane. Think back to a decade ago. The idea of homeownership was the cornerstone of the American dream. But today, that dream feels distant, almost out of reach for a whole generation. The numbers just don't seem to add up like they used to. What used to be a clear path now feels like a maze with no exit. When rates were hovering around 3%, borrowing money was cheap. It made higher home prices feel more manageable. But today, we're looking at rates that are often between 6% and 8%. Now, that percentage point difference might not sound like a huge deal on paper, but in the real world, it changes everything. Let's do some simple math to illustrate this. Imagine a $400,000 home. Now, let's talk about another massive factor. There simply are not enough houses to go around. This isn't a new problem. Its roots go back to the 2008 housing crash. After that crisis, home construction slowed down dramatically. Builders became incredibly cautious, lending for new developments tightened up, and for years, we were building far fewer homes than we needed to keep up with population growth. Fast forward to today, and we are still feeling the effects of that decade-long construction slowdown. We're living with a massive housing deficit. Compounding this problem is what some people call the golden handcuffs. Millions of current homeowners refinanced or bought their homes during the pandemic when mortgage rates hit rock bottom, locking in rates between 2% and 3%. Now, ask yourself, if you had a 2.5% mortgage, would you sell your home just to buy a new one at a 7% rate? Probably not. It just doesn't make financial sense. So, these homeowners are staying put. They aren't selling. This keeps existing home inventory incredibly low. When you have very few homes for sale, low supply, and a ton of people who want to buy high demand, what happens? Basic economics tells us that prices get pushed higher and higher. And so the cycle continues, with buyers competing for a tiny pool of available homes. Let's not forget about one of the biggest hurdles of all, the down payment. We have all heard the rule of thumb that you need a 20% down payment to buy a house. Beyond the numbers, there's also a powerful psychological layer to all of this. Many millennials and Gen Z adults grew up hearing the same narrative from their parents and grandparents. Work hard, save your money, buy a home. That's the path to success and security. It was presented as a fundamental part of adult life. But now, that goal feels delayed, or for some, completely unreachable. This creates a deep sense of frustration and anxiety. It can feel like you are playing a game where the rules were suddenly changed right in the middle. It makes people question if they've done something wrong, or if they're falling behind their peers or previous generations. This feeling of being stuck, despite doing all the right things, is a heavy burden to carry. So, where do we go from here? What happens now? A lot of people are asking, will home prices crash? The honest answer is maybe, but probably not in the way you're thinking. We might see modest price corrections in certain overheated markets, but a full-blown 2008 style crash is unlikely for many of the reasons we've already discussed, like the low inventory and the number of homeowners with locked-in low rates. The market dynamics are just completely different this time around. So, if you're feeling discouraged, I want you to hear this. Buying a house doesn't feel impossible because you failed. It feels impossible because the math has fundamentally changed. Home prices rose dramatically, interest rates shot up, the housing supply shrank, and a new wave of institutional investors entered the market, competing with everyday buyers. These are huge, systemic forces that are bigger than any one individual. But here's the crucial takeaway. Markets are not static. They evolve. And just as the market evolves, so can your strategy. The real question we should be asking isn't, why is this impossible? But rather, how do I adapt to this new reality? Maybe it means looking at different types of properties, like condos or townhouses. Maybe it means exploring different neighborhoods or even different cities. It might mean teaming up with family or friends to co-buy a property. Or maybe it means adjusting your timeline and focusing on building your savings and credit profile, so you're in the strongest possible position when an opportunity does arise. The old playbook for homeownership might not work anymore. But that doesn't mean we can't write a new one. It requires creativity, patience, and a willingness to think outside the box. The dream of having a place to call your own hasn't died, but the path to get there has definitely changed. Understanding these complex forces is the first step toward navigating them successfully. Thanks so much for watching. If this video helped you make sense of the current housing market, please give it a like and consider subscribing for more content that breaks down the big economic topics that affect our lives. See you in the next one.